No, like, woo! I need cash.
Tell me about that.
I need helicopter money.
Well, hey guys, this is Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, and we are joined with, actually, so let me start off. This is the Tim and John show. What is episode number 2 now? I'm not sure if we'd count
I guess it's kind of like this is the second real one where it's just us, shooting the shit, talking about, big events happening around the world. It's lots of stuff to cover today, Tim. So we should get right into it, shouldn't we?
And there's no shortage of big stuff that's been going on since the last time we've talked. And it is 9:30 at night on Mountain Time over here. John's probably 10:30 at night over there. Usually we're filming these at like 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning, so it's kind of different for me to do this at night. But there's just so much stuff we had to catch up, and I didn't think we could wait till tomorrow. And this is being streamed live on the Tim Picciott Liberty Advisor channel. So if you guys are watching this on Wham later, that's one place. And then we are pretty active now into Discord. So before the show, we were doing some show preps, and people who are in the Discord were, helping us out and giving us articles. So that's one way you can interact with John and myself. John's a little bit more active than myself on there, but all the articles that we share throughout the day, they all go into the Discord. So if you guys want to insight into the mind of myself and John, which is probably a scary place to be, then you can go to our Discord. But what do you want to start off with, John? Stock market, or we've got so much stuff going on.
Well, I think we should talk about the stock markets. The global stock markets, have been down over the last 3 days. Basically, since Monday, it really started to plummet. It kind of started in China, with the 9% drop. That was kind of the big scare, the corona, shutting down the whole economy. And we actually talked to Chris, one of our followers, just right now as he left us, but he was talking about massive disruptions in supply chain starting to happen over in China, where they had factories closed now for a while because of the coronavirus. So a lot of this is turning into, because they have a massive debt bubble, and a lot of corporations. I think there was an article that I saw that talked about how most Chinese corporations wouldn't even last for 3 months.
Dude, I was literally just writing that down right here. So steal my thunder. So I was gonna be okay. This is a perfect layout for that. But yeah, so most businesses can only last for 3 months, and at least I think it was like 40% of the businesses aren't even up and running right now. So that's just gigantic numbers.
Oh, it's a ridiculous. It's a massive disruption this coronavirus has created, and it's not stopping, because now you have outbreaks in South Korea and Japan. Italy has outbreaks right now, and of course they're causing disruptions there by closing down cities, small towns there is right now in Italy, and then of course now has spread to countries. Norway just had their first coronavirus, person with coronavirus coming to Norway now. So Norway was without coronavirus until today. So Norway's getting hit with people. Of course, the U.S. I think a lot more people will, start coming over with it, because there's so many now. That and of course the massive overreaction. In my point of view, I think it is anyways. People might think very differently and be very scared of it. Being a massive pandemic that's going to kill us all. I don't think it is. From what I've read, it's a little bit.
Only going to kill the people that got vaccinated for the flu shot. That's all it's going to kill. But yeah, speaking of overreaction, I mean, we've got, and this I guess will be played pretty badly if this turns out to be a pandemic. But over here we have Japan cancels sport and culture events amid concerns Olympics could be canceled. So basically, all the bread and circuses that they have going on over there are going to cease in hopes that they can have Tokyo 2020 over there. Because just didn't even think about that until today. I guess I don't want to think about the Olympics too much, but and I guess London's like, well, we could take it, but if we take it, you've got to basically tell us now, and it sounds like that's not going to happen. And
it's like anybody, let's talk about Olympics for a second, Tim. Talking about what happened to Brazil just recently was it 2016 they had the Rio Olympics, or was it 2018? I forgot now. But anyways, they had the world soccer. Yeah, they had the World Soccer Championships right after. They went bankrupt because of that. Very little money left in the coffers of the government. They had the massive deficit spending in order. That's what all that the Olympics are, massive, just waste of money. that is coming into the economy, and it's pretty useless.
Get this man a Mountain Dew or a coffee or something to.
Well, it's like you know what I need? I need this. Watch this. Like woo! I need cash.
Tell me about that.
I need helicopter money.
We've got helicopter money in what is it, Hong Kong? So what was like $1,300 a month that they're. I mean, what did Andrew Yang go over there and start coming up with their economic policies? Do you know anything about that? What's going on over there in Hong Kong?
Well, what they just actually did was that I think we looked at the numbers, $1,285 that they're going to give everybody that's over 18 years of age in Hong Kong as basically helicopter money. That's what it is. It's not UBI. It's just a one-time push into the economy, because the crisis, the protests and everything over in Hong Kong was not only about mainland China coming in and power grabbing and taking over Hong Kong and giving people their way less freedom. It was also about the massive real estate bubble that's there. People basically live in little plastic compartments everywhere. So all they need is they need this, more of this. They need helicopter money, Tim.
Is that like Zimbabwe dollars that you're throwing around, like trillions of dollars just going?
No. This is like $1,000 bills. It's like fake cash, but it's basically the same as US dollars or Canadian dollars, whatever it is, right? So it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's all fake garbage. Fiat anyways. But so it's a lot
Chinese
of
car sales. I mean, those are down. Let's see, 83% for the third week straight. And I think Chris he sent us an article. I'm trying to find it, but even something like the carbon emissions out of China. So here it is.
Oh, there, it said down 25% or something.
Right here. So analysis: coronavirus has temporarily reduced China's CO2 emissions by a quarter. So there you go. That looks like
that's the perfect. This is the thing. This is what we need to do, Tim.
Greta Thunberg is behind this. No, this has done way more than any legislation or Greta Thunberg or anybody.
Well, this is what needs to happen. Then we need to have this coronavirus outbreak around the world. This could actually cure, climate change with this coronavirus. First of all, you could wipe off a whole bunch of people, so you get the CO2 emissions there reduced. On top of it being nobody could do nothing because they're all in lockdown. So, then there you go. That's saving the climate right there. We need more of these virus outbreaks, pandemics. Let's have a mass pandemic, wipe off 65 million people like Bill Gates wants. That's what we really need, Tim.
Well, now we just so we don't get shadow banned and get accused of inciting violence, we are basically quoting none other than Bill Gates when it comes to all this stuff, when he says things like, we need to get carbon down to zero, and this isn't like
his equation,
it's this isn't like you got like a 10-foot car and a 10-foot in a 9-foot bridge, and you've got to have your car go down 2 feet. He's like, no, you've got to get down to zero. And then he shows P is for people in the equation. They're all laughing that it's got to get down to zero. And then goes on to say, if we do a good job with the and I haven't watched this in years, but it's something we do a good job with the food, the vaccines, and the healthcare system, we can lower that number by X something percent. Yeah. And then what was it? Oh, so I also want to point out that Josh Sigurdson was on Sam Tripoli the other day. You guys should definitely check it out. It was an awesome interview, and not just saying that because we're on Wham. I think it was a great interview. And on there, Sam Tripoli goes, what is this, like Babe Ruth calling out his home runs? And so it showed, Bill Gates talking about these different pandemics, like right before it happens. And so it's just very, coincidental, and these all come out of the, I don't know a ton about this. I haven't spent a lot of time delving into the conspiracy aspect of it, but it seems like it did not come for that fish market. You got this weaponized biosystem lab over there, then it just conveniently, comes, basically right from that exact area. And they're like, oh no way they could happen from our bioweapons lab that, was researching this exact same thing.
Well, yeah, it's like the Lyme disease, it came out of like right where they have a bio lab, and it was a place called Lyme where suddenly Lyme disease appeared in ticks,
it goes with coronavirus. So,
I had a question, in that equation that Bill Gates had, did you have fiat in there? Did you have fiat? Is it going to go to zero? Is it going to go to zero?
Actually, it's funny because Josh was actually mentioning Plum Island in the Sam Tripoli episode. So I don't know if you saw that. So it's just funny that.
No, I did not. No, I haven't had a chance yet. No.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up, though.
Sorry, I'm just getting addicted to my money cannon.
I had no idea that you're gonna be bringing a money cannon over here.
No, you didn't know. You did not know. Well, I bought a money cannon. I need to print money. I need to print money, buddy. You know,
Well,
that's
printing
what.
money is probably
Yeah,
going to be pretty good for gold in the long term. And another shout
exactly.
out to Zaphoid, Chris, who sent us this article saying that Citi sees gold topping $2,000 in the next 12 to 24 months. And if you guys want to know what we're talking about and where we got these articles from, we have a Discord. And so everything we save, it goes into the Discord. And then we've got a whole article section in there. And then as we were doing some show prep, which we usually never do any show prep. Usually we just come on and just start shooting it. And so this time we did a little bit of show prep, which is more of us probably just, fooling around. And then yeah, this is part of it. But Citi sees gold topping $2,000 in the next 12 to 24 months. And this is even, Citigroup talking about this. And I mean, you just have to look. I mean, what was it? China the other day printed like 2 or 3 Mondays ago, printed $174 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
In one day. Which was actually, that's not actually now more than the market cap of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's right now is about 160 billion, and they printed more than that just in one afternoon.
No, it's ridiculous, Tim, and this is what's going to happen, and that's why you see the Hong Kong, their central bank putting out the helicopter money. It's all about keeping the system from ending up in deflation, right? And because that's the biggest fear of any central banker, and of course, Mr. Ben Bernanke of all of them, back in 2002 had his big talk that
Osama Ben Bernanke.
Yeah, it basically said that if we get deflationary pressures, just don't worry because the pressures of the printing. He said the pressure of the printing presses would be applied, and inflation will eventually win over deflation, which is of course the enemy of any fiat currency system that needs constant debt in order to of course be alive. Inflation will eventually win over deep. So yeah, no, but it's interesting. We were just talking about how the Federal Reserve balance sheet has flattened out a bit here, and how it's interesting how the coronavirus came right at that time where the balance sheet was starting to flatten out,
and all the protests going on over in Hong Kong.
Yeah, and of course, like if you take a look at all this money printing around the world, and it was kind of like a great detractor from a lot of I sent you another article, I believe, Tim, from Beirut, but this is from Lebanon. They had serious bank runs over there in Lebanon, and mass crisis where people are severely starting to question the banks.
It was more than a 401k bank run then. So it was like
no. This is an actual bank run. Like people didn't even run; they just went into the bank and stole their money back. Well, at least they tried, but nobody can get their money out because it's capital controls there now. So it's just pretty crazy over there. It's Lebanon, other countries around the world are starting to see pressures on their banking systems because of this, deflationary pressure that's deflationary pressure that's around the world. This is
the greatest economy ever. I mean, John, what are you talking about? I mean, if it's so great that subprime credit card delinquencies spiked to record high and surpassed financial crisis peak. So, I mean, this would have been really good for for the presentation I gave. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, we've got one from Anarchapulco, the TDV Summit, where I basically gave probably the best smackdown that I think there's been in terms of destroying the notion that this is the greatest economy ever. John gave an awesome one on the war on cash, and I guess John doesn't have any video editing stuff, so I'll see if I can go get that edited for him, and we'll throw that up there too, because that was a great speech. I mean, it was a packed house for John. They all loved it. No one was leaving, and it was great. Did a great job on that one.
Well, it's interesting with the delinquencies on credit cards, and of course, that comes on top of we've covered this many times, Tim, and this is also in my reports that everybody should get. My report is available. I have, if you put in, if you go to my website, look up under the shop, I have Global Risk Report 2020 out there. I have a lot of stuff crammed in. I even have been adding stuff to it as we speak because I can. I add because there's so many different developments, Tim. So I just got to keep on adding a little bit to it in my risk report. But you could get it for now. If you go there, it's $99 usually. But if you put in TET for the economic truth, you actually get 75% off. So it's about $24, which is a steal of a price.
All right, so I'm showing them right now. So we're at the economictruth.org, and then you said go down to economic analysis. Was that?
No, go to shop. If you go to shop there, You'll see right under there, and if you actually click on Global Investment Risk Report there, so 99 to your right there, just over, yeah.
Boom.
And what's interesting here, if you go down, actually, I have two guys that have looked over and bought the report. If you go all the way down there, you'll see some reviews at the bottom here. And these are not just like somebody. This is a senior vice president and a good friend of mine actually now. We totally agree on a lot of things. He's from Morgan Stanley, and there's actually a former World Bank economist that have really looked into a lot of my stuff now. And he wrote this little piece on what he thought about my report. So you can see that, yeah, there's some people that even the top guys,
Big dogs,
think that, I'm putting out some valuable content for people, and I really do my best. It's been 10 years now, so it's starting to become somewhat of a little bit of an expert on things, and starting to understand, how the world economy hangs together. And what's great though is that it's not too much crazy academic jargon in the report, because I hate to be frank, I really hate all that economic jargon, all that fake language that they put up, so nobody will understand it and be like, oh yeah, just don't worry, leave it to the economists, because they are the only ones that understand what quantitative easing is, or Operation Twist, quantitative tightening, whatever they like.
The economists are just basically trying to see, say the least amount they can in the most amount of words.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, well, they basically become politicians, right? Where you gotta, never answer a question, first of all, and then try to just wriggle your way around the question by saying a whole bunch of garbage that nobody cares about. And so that's how it works now. There's no real facts, or math doesn't matter anymore in the economy. It's also
and now all
supposed
the
to
new
be
kids are
based
learning
on
Common
mathematics.
Core. Now all the new kids are learning Common Core, so they're even more screwed than they were before.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. So we're like, basically, the whole what do you call it? The whole economics degree, PhD, when you go all the way up, it's supposed to be based upon a whole bunch of formulas. The problem is, I looked at some of these formulas, Tim, and quote me wrong here, but if you have a formula that has, I think I looked at one, I forgot which one it is, that has something to do with monetary velocity. But monetary velocity is a set there, it's supposed to be solid, but it always fluctuates. But then on the other side, you had two solid numbers that would not change. But then you have a fluctuating number and solid number on the other side of the equation. That doesn't make sense to me. When one number can change on the one side, that equation is flawed. But no, that doesn't matter. Just forget about it.
I dropped one class in all of college, and it was on some sort of economic calculus, and I didn't even know about Austrian economics or Ron Paul or anything back then. But I knew enough to know that this was all bullshit and basically a gigantic waste of my time, and that none of this was how the real world worked, and they were just making shit up. So now I'm actually taking a look, kind of switching gears to the S&P. Actually, this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, because that's usually what's quoted, even though most financial professionals use the S&P 500. We're taking a look from peak to trough over here. I mean, we're down 2,611 points just since we were in Acapulco 2 weeks ago. So that's probably some cause for concern, I would say, being down 2,600 points. And I laid out the same basically investment strategy that I was using a year and a half ago that I'm still using now, and it's been effective. And it's not always going to be effective, but essentially what we're doing is we had some put options. So that way we know what the max downside someone can go down is. But then we also realize that we're in a world where essentially the powers that be, the big banks, they want to have rates go back down to zero. They want to have the implied, direction of all these interest rates going down. So what they're going to do is they are going to keep having the market go down until the Fed cries uncle. And so at what point will they do that? I mean, will they want to do that? Because then they're going to be accused of doing political things to help out Trump, when Trump was then accusing Janet Yellen of doing political things to help out Obama, which is in my presentation. And so who knows? I mean, I think about 20% is the amount. Then you've got Donald Trump coming out. And it's funny because I said this actually in the last video that I did, only a quick 10-minute video, where I said, as the market could be going down because, it looks like now there's a greater and greater chance that, a hardcore socialist could be in there. what I like to also call a communist in Bernie Sanders. And the crazy part is, so as Bernie gains more and more steam, and I think they'll probably steal from him anyways, but as he gains more and more steam, then the market can go down even further. Then as it goes down even further, then it's more of a chance that Trump's going to lose, and then which then makes the market go down even more. So then it's like a whole feedback mechanism loop. And they're probably going to steal from him and put the CIA asset Pete Buttigieg in there. Is sort of what I think is going to happen. And then I was watching part of the debate. I'm not sure, you probably didn't catch the debate. I watched some of it after the fact. And what really struck me is I saw a lot of the same crap that were pulling on Ron Paul that they were pulling on Bernie Sanders, where they stacked the audience. I think it cost like over $1,000 to get in there. It was all Bloomberg cronies and Tom Steyer cronies. And, every time they said, and meanwhile, I cannot stand Elizabeth Warren, cannot stand Bernie Sanders, but I know that this whole thing is just a screw job. And so you see like how they place like the different shotgun mics. When people are booing Bernie Sanders, they focus on that. And then when Bloomberg is up there, they focus on the people who are, just going wild and doing all this applause. And it's not even that. And then they've got, they're running Bloomberg ads during the thing. And so, I mean, it's just a whole bought and paid for. And, I'd love to have.
I told you Hillary's going to come in, Tim. It's happening.
Yeah, she made the presentation too, because I think that she's letting everybody beat themselves up. I don't really see her being a number 2 to Bloomberg, or if she is, then
no, she's coming in herself. I told you that. She's coming in herself. She's not willing to quit. What Trump, said the best quality that Hillary had. She never quits.
You know what? I do remember that. I do remember that. That was good. Actually, so this is right now, and I guess we actually are live, so I can say that we're live. So now the Dow is set to drop more than 400 points on the open. So that would then put us down 3,000. Things are starting to heat up over here, down over 3,000 points from. And that was today. They were the last 2 days, mind you. The Dow implied open was, I think, like 2 days ago, it was like 230 or 250. And today it was like 100. And I posted about this on my Facebook saying 100 implied open when you've gone down 2,000 points is a terrible, terrible sign, because it's probably like the plunge protection or some algos in there who are buying.
Unleash the cash.
Release the hounds.
Well, my hounds might murder me, actually. One of my little boys here is very aggressive against me recently, but I feel like he has a grudge. Maybe he's a socialist, and, he's one of those Antifas. He really gets aggravated by my capitalist thoughts.
He's mad that the Yang gang had to drop out and can't get more.
Yeah, no more of this. No more of this. No more helicopter money, then.
So did you read I didn't read the article with Muhammad Al-Arian, but is that something that you read or
No, I did not read it, but I saw he was warning against, buying the dip, because that's what was it, Kudlow or whoever was out there, just recently saying that, yeah, buy the dip, it's time to buy the dip. Everything is cheap.
So we put out a video with Charlie Robinson that was on my channel that we just put out yesterday, actually.
MAGA stocks.
And some of the stuff we talked, and then actually, this is another video that I did with Josh, probably like 4 or 5 days ago. And in that video, it's probably like more like a week ago, but in that video, we were talking about how Trump was trying to incentivize people to get into the stock market, where there's going to be additional incentives outside of the 401k or IRA to incentivize people to get in there. And I mean, to then be promoting people to get into the market at an all-time high is just showing how desperate they are to try to keep things going. And I guess that plan is probably going to be back on track, because now that things are going down, they need to just game things as much as possible. And if you guys have not seen the presentation I gave in Acapulco, I mean, literally all of it just like builds into exactly where we're at right now. I mean, I super highly recommend that. John was my cameraman for that, so it was nice enough.
And you blew my mind.
Blew his mind too, except there was one dude sleeping and it was right next to John, and I called him out in there too. So.
No, it's Tim. I sent you. We just got to talk about this, because I sent you a link to the share price of Moody's, because we got to talk about these rating agencies. As you know,
was that in Discord? Was that in the Discord?
Yeah. No, in our main yours chat.
Okay.
yeah, if you go take a look at that and put it on to old time, so we could actually see the old time stock chart here. We're just waiting for Tim to pull it up. Just you got to watch this, because this is interesting. So this is the rating agency, one of them. You know, we got this Standards and Poor's and Fitch, of course, but Moody's.
All right, we got it.
Here we go. Now it's coming here. So take a look at this. You know, this is very interesting. Take a look at that massive, you know, rack up here. Meanwhile, you know, it's actually following the CLO creation. Yeah. It's just basically following the collateralized loan obligation, you know, that they're rating, which is basically a derivative, which is the same as, you know, the derivatives that they built for the credit defaults, the collateralized debt obligations back in 2007 when that collapsed. So now you're seeing the rating agency here is, again, you know, and it's skyrocketing. If you go and look at banks, I have in my report, Tim, of course, like all the major banks around the world, they're actually most of them are on lows, except for, I believe, the only ones that really are up is Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan. Those are the only banks that are up in share price. All the other ones are down. But then, of course, you've got Moody's up there, you know, just skyrocketing in share price.
Doesn't Warren Buffett own like part of Moody's? He owns one of them. And then what a perverse relationship where they know that they have to give these ratings. If they don't give the ratings, then they can go to another rating agency and lose their money or lose the business. And so it just creates this whole perverse relationship. And then I talked about this too in the presentation. That I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but it was something like 46% or maybe even higher than that. I think it's about half of all corporate or AAA, or it's not, half of all investment grade bonds are BBB, which is the lowest investment grade quality there is. And then if you take a look at
2018, Tim, there was 78% of all issued, a little bit more, 78.41, I believe, was speculative. So it was not investment grade. So it was BB and
what
lower.
I'm talking about is half of the investment grade is the bottom rung of investment grade. And typically a huge percentage of those in a recession get dropped down a notch. And then it's going to create all this forced selling from the index funds and from because all of a sudden, if you're ranked BB and you're in a investment grade fund, well, then they're forced to sell. And then when they're forced to sell, then that creates even more selling pressure. And it creates a whole basically catastrophic effect. And so either that's going to create the market to absolutely tumble, in which case our put options and then probably some of our gold and probably some Bitcoin positions, other satellite positions are probably going to explode in value. Maybe not initially, but eventually.
No, there'll be a sell-off, right? There'll be margin calls, you know, to cover or whatever.
And then what's going to happen?
Safety.
Other central banks are going to come in, print a bunch of money, and that may or may not actually, you know, make the market go back up. I won't say fix it, but it won't. And so we're in a situation right now where everything is artificially gamed, and if the market goes up a lot because it's more artificially gamed, we'll win because of that. If it goes down a lot, we'll lose, you know, a lot less than everybody else, probably mid-single digits, in the mid-single digits, and then we'll come in and buy a bunch of stuff that got lost way too much value, and then I think we're going to come out ahead in this. But the problem is the average person then is going to be way worse off, and they're going to try voting in more hardcore socialists and communists. They're going to vote for more government, make things get even worse. And and for those of you listening to the podcast right now, not actually viewing us, John is having a great time over there. He's now woke himself back up. And I will say, I've very rarely have done one of these at 10 o'clock at night my time. So, you know, so anything to help keep me awake is definitely needed. But yeah,
well,
just
yeah, this is just ridiculous. Like I was just looking at it just randomly, I think 2 days ago, and I was like, holy smokes, this is ridiculous. Because you know, especially my report, the 2020 Global Risk Report, that you definitely should go out there and get. It's only $24 if you use the code TET. You'll get you know, some serious money off of that report, which has great value. You know, in that report, I have exactly what you're talking about, Tim. Where I have all the corporate debt that are over like certain terms, and the longer the terms, Tim, the more BBB. So basically, I think it was I forgot how much of that actually report it was, but it was just
on that.
Yeah.
Oh, so here we go. We got Moody's Corporation. This is about 2.5 years old.
Oh, This is Mr. Buffett.
12.8% stake in the entire
There you
company.
go.
This is a couple years ago. I'm sure it's, it's probably floating around that somewhere.
He's
But
probably bought more.
But
That's
then they have,
probably what's it's driving up the share price.
But then they have other companies, and those other companies that they have can then be rated by Moody's, and so then it's like you're buying. It's like the fox guard and the hen house that they can then go to the other companies and say that they're financially solvent, because if they weren't, then the value of their portfolio would go down, and if it does go down, I mean, the largest recipient of bailout funds was Warren Buffett, and so they want to raise your taxes because your tax money goes to them. That's why the rich don't pay. The ultra parasitic elite, they don't pay taxes.
Well, talking about Buffett, he just bailed out like last year. I was last year or I think it was 2017, 18, where he bailed out Home Capital Group, a home lender that was going belly up here in Canada. But then 6 months after, they issued a mortgage-backed security. Interestingly enough, that was AAA rated, and of course, he bought and he owned Home Capital Group. He bought it with I think it was $13 billion acquisition that he did. And then of course, he buys, he owns the rating agency Moody's, which rates then, AAA. That was, it was supposed to be insolvent, most of the debt in Home Capital Group, but no, now it's fine. It's interesting how, it kind of coalesces with the issuance of CLOs. It's like kind of right at the end, or these derivatives are kind of right at the end of a credit bubble, because you got to get them off their books, all these by using these special purpose vehicles and entities, as they're called, corporations that they shovel these mortgages into, and then
he was calling derivatives a weapon of potential financial destruction, and here he is, helping, change the laws to. So much stuff. I guess some other stuff, kind of switching gears here, because back to that debate. So one of the things I saw in the debate that really struck me is there was a spot where, first off, Joe Biden was taking credit for everything. Every single thing that had been done is like, I was the one that did that, and I personally did this, and this is because it, like basically is like the Al Gore of, inventing. It's sort of inventing the internet. Basically made every single claim that everything was his fault. It's not fault, like he's taking credit for it. And so one of the things that he was taking credit for was the 94 crime bill, but then they cut him off because he was trying to brag, because they were talking about whether marijuana should be legalized or not.
Yeah.
You got, Michael Bloomberg, basically being up there saying, it's a dumb idea. We don't know what the science says about this. And then you've got Joe Biden's like itching to get in there. He's like, I wrote the 94 crime bill. I established the 94 crime courts. And then they cut him off. And then they go over later on, he's then talking to Tom Steyer, who Tom Steyer owned a bunch of private prisons. And so he's like, and how dare you own all these private prisons that, you're exploiting black people. Like, oh, they're the same black people that got in there because of the 94 crime bill that you wrote. Is that not lost in anybody? I watched very little of this.
I think people are stupid, Tim. That's what it all comes down to. They just think you're sheep, a moron, a useless little peasant out there that know nothing, that they could just blatantly lie right to your face. They're saying one thing, like within just minutes, right? They're saying a totally different thing. So
and now Bernie Sanders is a Russian agent, and
he's a Russian.
So here we go. Facebook investigates suspicious pro-Sanders content. And actually, even on my Facebook page, they said that they need to verify my home address again, or else they're not going to let me post.
Hey, don't believe them. It's the Swedes. They're behind everything, Tim. I tell you.
Damn Swedes.
Yeah, the Swedes. Look at the IKEA empire. He was actually Nazi. The head of. He died now, but he used to be one of the biggest Nazis in Europe, actually, back in the time. So there you go. It's the Swedes, Tim.
And then part of your presentation, you're talking about how the Swedes had was it the first central bank, or they're the ones who sort of?
Well, yeah, actually, they had their first private bank. Well, not the private bank, but it was interesting. And let me just tell that story because it's pretty hilarious. So the Swedes, of course, back in this is the 1600s, mid 1600s, they used to have something called the copper dollar, which was just humongous. Like they were literally from I believe they were all the way down to £5 all the way up to 5 kilos all
Are
the way
they
up to
shaped like at
40
least like a
kilos.
barbell so you can kind of get like dual use out of them?
No, not even that.
They're
Like they just were like useless plates that was stamped by the government. So they were like massive, and they had serious issues to actually like collect taxes on it. The carriages that they went and stole all the money from the peasants from got stuck everywhere because it was so darn heavy. So of course in 1663, I believe it was, no, 1656, it was Palmstruck. John Palmstruck created the first paper or money that was issued, but it was private bank that he issued it from. So it took like only 7 years for it to fail. And then, of course, he was sentenced to death by hanging. Meanwhile, only 6 years after that happened, the first central bank opens up with the same money printing idea that Palmstruck had, that he was sentenced to death for. The Swedes actually created the first central bank of the world. So that's quite interesting. We were talking about Swedish domination here. They are, Tim. I'm serious.
I know,
the Swedes
John
are in
being a
control.
Norwegian, we just lost all of our Swedish audience. So
No, I got lots of friends. They know how we always trash talk each other. It's a natural thing that you have to do. If you're Norwegian, you're supposed to hate the Swedes.
and they'll probably just talk about how they've got better hockey players and a lot more Olympians.
Well,
be able to.
Well, it's really funny. We actually have opposite jokes. So the Swedes have the same exact joke about the Norwegians. So it's pretty funny listening to it.
Speaking of funny, one other thing that I came across today, I didn't really read the whole thing, but we've got Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks dude, says a union would hurt progressive outlet. And then, I mean, somewhere in here it goes on to say that, if they had a union from the beginning, that there's no way. He said, if there had been a union at the network, it would not have grown the same way it has. And I think somewhere else he goes on to say, for a smaller digital media company, those are absolutely real considerations. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have a union. Everyone should know the full context. And I don't know, basically he goes on to be like, well, you can't, because of all the, the bureaucracies and rules and additional costs, have a union. And here he is, Mr. championing unions and Mr. We need pro-democracy and what the people think. And so they want to, he wants to complain about how hard it is when he gets paid a shitload of money by YouTube. They force feed all the Young Turk crap down her throat. Whereas our channel and, on World Alternative Media, we're basically have both our arms and legs chopped off, swimming upstream while getting dunked and crapped on the entire time. And then he wants to go out and complain about how tough it is. And, everybody else should have a union, but, let's not have us, and let's not have ourselves have a union. And just like, all these elites in Greta Thunberg, like, oh, everybody else, you guys can go live in squalor, but while we fly around in our private jets and go to our 10 houses. And
yeah, well, hey, let me tell you about unions. I grew up in Norway. Norway is like laden with unions, like everywhere. It's all over the place, and we actually, because of unions, that you had an increase on an average 3 to 5% of salaries for everyone. So literally, like you're having the unions pushing everybody into hyperinflation, and Norwegian inflation is ridiculous. And of course, we have the highest debt in the world because we have the highest taxes. So we're just getting double whammy. But the interesting thing with growing up in Norway was that one company, I worked for one of the biggest telecom infrastructure companies in the world. And what was interesting is we actually were, here in North America, it's like you're either unionized or you're non-unionized company. I work for a non-unionized company. I hate unions. But the company in Norway was both unionized and non-unionized people, Tim. And what was interesting is I got paid a lot more than the union people because I actually independently negotiated, and I was a good skilled worker. So I actually, worked by myself doing great work, and, got appreciated by that, by races, instead of the union guys sitting on their ass. I used to have the head of the union working for me. He destroyed one of my jobs. We lost like, almost like 50,000 kroner, which is equivalent to almost $10,000, just because of him showing up to work and then doing everything wrong, not telling anyone. And it's just like, I can't despise them. And of course they went on strikes all the time. And then like they literally tried to blockade the roads into the work site. So, I had to get by there. Like I was non-unionized, so I always worked. I didn't care, but
I guess
it was
speaking
really
of
funny.
unions, I just see over here on CNBC that the Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers joins top NFL stars rejecting new collective bargaining agreement. So maybe even the NFL unions are trying to protect their
Well,
own.
it's like this is funny. So you have like even for the breads and circuses have their own unions now. It's become very interesting. All these big arenas are taxpayer funded usually. Like here in Manitoba, for example, we have our CFL. The Canadian Football League. Our team just got. Of course, we won this year, but actually the same year they got actually bailed out because the provincial government took on, I think it was like something like almost $30 million worth of debt that they took on that they failed to pay this sports club. So they've basically been bankrupt, but then they took all the debt and made it, a taxpayer bailout, basically.
Well,
So
right by
yeah.
me. So I'm right next to Glendale, Arizona. My new house is actually like literally like across the street is basically Glendale, and I'm not in Glendale specifically because I think it's the second most indebted city as like a percentage in all of America, because they brought in the NFL stadium and they had taxpayers pay for all of that, and they brought in the hockey rink, and it was in a part of town that wasn't super popular and kind of far away from things. And so I mean, they were doing the math like, even if they sold out every single time and they were selling X amount of hot dogs and like all these rosy projections, they still wouldn't break even. And even after they won, I forgot what it's called, almost the Super Bowl, but even after they won the World Series with Randy Johnson, I think they still lost money that year too. And so, and then they, for like Dodgers spring training, like spending like $100 million or maybe even more than that, maybe like 250 million, something. It was something crazy. And it's weird because right now we're just sort of like just spitballing on random things that we definitely weren't originally going to talk about. And so I'm on CNBC.com. Actually, let me go back to the homepage. Oh, and now Dow set to drop 450 points.
Well, Nikkei has dropped 0.5% since we started talking, by the way. So this is just a predecessor of what's usually happening in Europe. Like Nikkei is very tightly actually tied to the US dollar, like the yen. Usually there's a lot of carry trade. So people borrow in negative interest rates over in Japan, and then they invest in high
Yeah,
yielding
the carry
assets
trade.
around the world. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I
So it's
found
yeah.
it was an article that, and if you actually read it, it says sponsored by NASDAQ, but it's on the front of CNBC. And if you aren't paying attention, you'd think it was like just like a regular article, and that it wasn't paid promotion. But here, let me go to it, because this is me looking at it for the first time ever right now. You guys, this is in real time. Paid post for NASDAQ. NASDAQ's proposal to improve market quality for thinly traded small and medium-sized companies. So I guess here they are trying to do things to promote the market, to promote economic and pricing efficiency by focusing on the listing and trading of thinly traded securities, to encourage national securities exchanges that are basically, it's like we're just trying to put lipstick on a pig over here and try to prevent the market going down, is how I'm reading this. And maybe one of the reasons why the market's going down is because, and this is a Zero Hedge article that I think just got posted, where
The
it
Fed,
shows,
the Fed is coming. Woo!
oh, literally. And so scientists discover HIV-like mutation, which makes coronavirus extremely infectious. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm just reading this right now for the first time. And it's saying there's an HIV-like mutation, which allows it to bind with human cells up to 1,000 times stronger than the SARS virus. So COVID-19 has an HIV-like mutation that allows it to quickly enter the human body by binding with a receptor called the ACE2 on a cell membrane. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what any of this crap means, but basically it says it's 100 to 1,000 times as efficient. So much more efficient killer. And this is part of a uh, paper published by Dr. Zhu Peng of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And meanwhile, Zero Hedge is reporting on this stuff, and they are now banned for Twitter for life. So that's the kind of world that we live in. And so, so as this news starts getting crazier and crazier, it looks like the Dow is dropping even more. So, I mean, now we're going to be down we're in total about 3150 if you take it into account from peak to trough over here. And so people have, accused me sometimes of shilling and, you're trying to do so much selling. But you know what? If you listen to my strategy 2 years ago, you'd be way up right now. If you listened to it, 2 weeks ago, you would have lost way less money than you would have, potentially even be up, depending on, exactly when you got in. And so it's, if you think you have something that can help people out, I mean, do you want to help people out beforehand, or do you want to help people out after they've lost 30% of their money? And so, yeah, I out here and I make money by people investing with me, and I'm also helping save their retirements and helping give them advice. And so it's a collaboration. John's over here with all of his economic data and his super in-depth, detailed report where it's like infographic deal where every page is interactive and just like tons and tons of information on there. It's only $100, and with the code, it's even less money than that. And so we just threw a whole bunch of articles and stuff we're going to talk about, and it is kind of getting late, so I don't know if there's.
I think there was I think there was one. Did we actually talk about the JP Morgan ICE plan to break stigma of the Fed discount window? Did we talk about that article?
We didn't.
Let's get into that one because that's the last thing that we should get into. And you're a little bit more set to talk about this. You understand this a little bit better than me, I believe.
Okay, I don't even have the article up, but I understand it better. But where was that on Was that on Discord that you sent that over?
No, I'll send it to you right now, so you could actually see here. It's coming on your.
I know I saved that article the other day, but
that's fine. It's right here. It's coming. So yeah, so this is interesting.
I thought you have the money printing going again when you're saying it's coming. So.
Well, I'll do it right away. I just like waiting for the right moment. Print some more money. I gotta wait until the dip. When the dip comes, you gotta push in some more liquidity into the system.
The dip.
Did you find it there? Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
JP Morgan eyes plan to break stigma of Fed's discount window, and let me scroll down here. We think it's an important step for us to take a break to break the stigma here. Blah 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 blah. And so what they're talking about, and actually I went into very great detail on this in my presentation, so which is probably why John said that I would know what to talk about. So the Fed discount window, whenever everyone talks about the Fed rate, all that rate really means is the discount window at the Federal Reserve. How things usually work is all the banks need to hold 10% reserves. Some banks will have 9, some banks will have 11. So the banks that have 11% will lend to the banks that only have 9, and then they'll even things out. Usually it's going to be they charge each other what the Fed funds rate is. So I don't know what it is right now. It's like let's call it like 1.75 or something like that.
Are you talking about the repo?
The Fed, yeah, I'm talking about the repo. And
yeah, I think it's like 1.8, 1.7, something around there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my guess was pretty close then. So so with that, how it works is that then the banks just it's kind of like a self correcting mechanism. But what happened in September is that the banks were charging each other 10% to lend money overnight. And so what the banks could have done is they could have went to the Fed's discount window, but they didn't want to go to the Fed's discount window because then it was like a big scarlet letter. And so the banks decided that they would pay 10% rather than let people know that they were in trouble. And so that only went on for one day. And then the Fed came in with tons of liquidity. And then they started doing 2-week repos and 12
liquidity.
Repos, 32.
Woo! Oh no!
Oh no, we're all out.
I'm a lot of money. Oh no!
Printing presses.
That's it. Okay, we're done. This is it, Tim. We're at the end of it.
Now we can't crashing even more because of that. So what this article is, even though I didn't read the article, I guess what they're trying to say is that with JP Morgan eyeing to break the plan of the stigma, what it's sort of so JP Morgan's like, oh, we're the big bad strong bank, and so we'll come in and we'll go use it, and so that way it then creates makes it safer for everybody else. I'm not sure if that's what they're saying.
It's a safe space for banks.
A lot of this shit was caused by JP Morgan allegedly to begin with because they had a whole bunch of they had a whole bunch of shorter term debt instruments, and then they ended up they shifted those assets into longer term debt, and now that longer term debt is characterized differently than the shorter term debts. Then they didn't have extra money to then lend out, and then that's kind of what caused this whole thing to begin with. And then now with the interest rates going down, it then increased the value of the longer term debt, so they probably made a bunch of money off that. And then who knows, now they could probably come in and sell it and do the thing.
Well, you got to remember, basically it's JP Morgan is at the top of the whole banking pyramid. And then underneath there, you got Deutsche Bank, you got, I think HSBC might be there. You got what I believe Wells Fargo is at the top.
And HSBC, that's Hong Kong, Shanghai. So I imagine they've got to be taking a shot.
Yeah, you got helicopter money. Let's see if I got any helicopter money. Oh no, it's empty. It's all over.
We've blown our wad. Yeah. We've got none left.
There's no more money to be printed. It's like Weimar Republic. They had to stop printing. They actually printed only on one side of their $5 billion Reichsmarks. Because the ink was so expensive that they couldn't print both sides. It's the same thing as running out of ammunition, which I did. I tried to be a central bank, but over the time of just a an hour, I misused my power, and now now I run out of money. Deflation's taking place here. I got no tools left to print into the economy, so we're basically screwed there, Tim. Central Bank of John has gone bankrupt here, and it's time to go to zero finally of all that money printed.
Time to maybe just you turn it on and off again in the morning. It might start working again. So
you never know. I might load it up again with some more cash, but it takes time. It's supply chain management here, and of course I run out of the supply, which is liquidity into the system, and now we're gonna have a massive crash tomorrow. But here we go. Yeah,
HSBC Holdings. I mean, they've gone from almost 54 down to 35 in the span of 2 years. So I mean, that's, I don't know, what is it like?
Well, pull that out to the max. Pull that out to the max. Watch this. Like, here we go. Shit. Yeah, there you go. It's even worse. Look at this. So like
99 to, so I mean, almost it's called 100.
Well, this is the peak. You don't care about the peak. Just go back to 99. This is not a bubble right there. 99. And
even before it crashed 99.
Yeah, it's basically, it's almost crashed 50% from 99. That's like in my article. I have all these banks except for JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, as I said. All of them have crashed.
It's actually lower than where it was at January 1st, 2009. It's actually a lot lower than where it's at October 1st, 2008, after the financial crisis was already in the first 2 weeks. It was well underway.
Well, yeah, it just shows that there's no trust in banks anymore. People are exiting out of banks. Nobody believes that banks have anything to say anymore. The trustworthiness of banks is just severely.
And let's get into this. Let's maybe have the last thing we touch about. You mentioned supply chain of your money printing. But what about the supply chain of China, and then people who are relying on China, and then all the output that's not there, and then where are these? I mean, and then I think Chris was even getting into like the amount of drugs that were made over there, and the amount of medicine and the mask, and a lot of. I mean, we'd be screwed if this actually ends up being like a thing.
Well, most of the stuff that comes that I use in my field, a lot of it comes out of China. About 70 to 80%. Actually, this was made in China, by the way. I bought it directly from China. So there you go. But I did it before the coronavirus came out, so I lucked out on.
So that's actually meant for like dollar bills that you just go.
Yeah, you could feed whatever currency in there. Like, it actually fits. I think it's a dollar bill could even fit in there if you wanted to. So it's but yeah,
go down to the next year if we go to Acapulco, just go there with a bunch of pesos at the Mexican strip club. No, it's just making it. Which I didn't. We didn't do any of that this year. But
we're good boys. Me and Tim. Me and Tim are good boys.
Sick. Down and out, but no, it'd just be funny because the pesos were so less.
I had the coronavirus down there. I caught the coronavirus.
And I have no idea what their money even is. I mean, they got all these different coins of, like, okay, this is worth, like a fraction of a penny, and
Yeah, no, it's
lug that around.
But let's get back quickly to the supply chain in China, and how it's breaking down. The worst case scenarios here is that you will have the factories that produce kind of I think they're called tier 1 parts, where they actually are a super important part and that can only be manufactured from one plant. There's some stuff that could start to really seriously disrupt. For example, you can't produce any iPhones, you can't produce cars even, and so on, because of the supply chain disruption, because of all the closed, the quarantining of cities, basically closing all the cities, making them into ghost cities. But they do have a lot of ghost cities in China, by the way, beforehand. So that's nothing new in China. It's just that there's actually people with millions of people living in cities who are now ghost cities, which basically everybody lives inside. And this goes back to what we were saying, that it's so important to have the supplies when something like this could happen, because the government will just
it's so important to have an extra whole ghost city on hand. Thousands of them, just in case something like this happens.
Yeah, exactly. You could just go out of that city, and then how about just shipping everybody to a city that's, made for 5 million people? They could just ship all the corona people over there and just put them into one big ghost city. there you go. No, we shouldn't laugh about this, but again, it's just ridiculous. Like the amount of
it's like gallows humor, as like the whole world's burning, and we've got it could be Bernie Sanders versus Trump, and then people want to call me an extremist, and extremist compared to what? I mean, look at this absolute shit show that's going on with this whole presidency thing. And I mean,
well, I think it was spiced up. You got to laugh about it, but it really was spiced up when Trump comes out and tweets all the time. He doesn't care what he's saying. He actually, I think Trump did a lot of good things on that side, where he actually kind of opened more for a little bit of free speech, at least to people daring at least more speaking up against this, totalitarian.
Actually, I like a lot of the stuff that he
Marxism, yeah.
A lot of stuff that people criticize him about are like the things I like, and then a lot of things that people
he does.
And a lot of the things that people like him for are the things that I don't like him for, because they're like, oh well, you gotta admit that he's doing great in the economy. I'm like, oh well,
Well, yeah, it's basically like, yeah. Well, you saw, like, I ran out of ammunition here, and that's what's going to happen with the Federal Reserve. I believe the Federal Reserve will end up like what the Bank of Japan has done. We were talking about the Nikkei, basically almost like now very close to evaporating year-over-year returns.
12% of all the
86.11, and that was as of mid 2018, I believe, when I looked at the balance sheet numbers versus the actual physical supply.
That's actual fascism. I've been pointing it out for a long time. They print money up out of thin air, use that money to buy back their stocks, which is then the state buying up the corporations, which is the state and corporate merger, which is fascism. But never hear Antifa talk about that. Never hear the Democrats complain about that.
Yeah, nobody's talking about share buybacks. Isn't that interesting, Tim? We got, what was it, 400 billion something in 2019 of share buybacks. And there's so many, no names. I have the list in my report as well, where you just see like Microsoft, Apple, Wells Fargo, Raytheon. Like you could just basically list almost every, like, S&P 500 almost was on that list. But that's just what they've done, and they bought, sometimes some companies almost bought 20-30% of their shares back, which is just ridiculous. And there's no, like, we've gotten to the point where I call it the financialization of the economy, where when you can just make money with money, and there's no real reason for us to actually go out there or like do the work that I do, for example. There's no reason for me to go out and work. I just sit at home and trade and make money, because the stock markets always goes up. I just put some money into real estate, and the real estate would always goes up because of money printing. We're all fine. But the problem is with that, that really fuels a massive inflation over time. And you've seen that in mainly the stock market and
but everything is going to be okay, because Mike Pence has been appointed the czar of the coronavirus for America. So now that the government's coming in to help,
there you go.
I wasn't worried before, but now that I know the government's trying to stop it, and now that actually gets me worried, because they'll probably fuck it up even more.
You know who we need as the czar? Who would be a real good czar for the coronavirus? I think Bill Gates needs to be in there and be the czar. Talking about how we could really depopulate the United States and just get they really should advocate to get the coronavirus everywhere, because this could be a real awesome pandemic that could really fulfill a lot of Gates and all these other guys' goals of reaching zero carbon emissions, because any human that is eliminated from planet Earth, we shouldn't laugh about this, but this is like the reality of what these crazy morons are talking about. Is the more people,
it sounds insane, but I know it's true. So
yeah, and it's crazy because like the more people you remove, well, now there's less CO2. But the problem is, like, nobody's talking about volcanoes or anything of that, that spews out,
Which my flight was actually diverted coming back from Acapulco because a volcano went off. So I've never had that one before.
Yeah, and actually, this is hilarious. We're talking too much here, but with the IPCC, they're actually, I think, was in 2 years from now, they're gonna actually start implementing into their numbers, calculate actually the interference of the sun on the climate. They haven't even used that yet, which is just beyond my grasp of understanding. Because
then Dr. Tim Ball gets like sued over saying stuff like that, even though everyone knows.
But actually, he sued Michael Mann for the hockey stick, and he won. So it's a lot of wins. He actually was probably the main guy behind the EPA and everything over there, because he went over there. Like when I talked to him when I was in Phoenix, actually. We called it an inconvenient lie. It was basically the anti-global warming kind of case, we tried to invite a whole bunch of people that was for global warming, but
I think
nobody
Ernie went there, and he actually had
yeah,
a sign.
that's how I
that
actually
said,
meant. That's actually how I met Ernie.
I think his sign says something like, "What happens when it gets cold?" or like, "What happens when, if we
Yeah,
get
but
the
it
next
was,
ice age."
but just like discounting the sun, that's like totally insane to me. Like the sun literally, like, well, on my weather station that I have, it was one day throughout summer, it was warming 1,038 watts per square meter. Sun doesn't have anything to do with warming.
And
And
nobody has any idea what
yeah,
that means, but we'll just take your word that it's a lot.
well, think about it. It's like putting a baseboard heater within a little tiny 1x1, 1x1 meter square box,
your
and then
closet.
sitting in there. Yeah. So that's going to be hot. But that's how hot the sun gets. And, we kind of discount that the sun doesn't have anything to do with the climate. It's just beyond my belief. Like now there's actually a lot of experts. You should look up Suspicious Observer on YouTube. He's a fantastic guy. Super smart. Like he's looking at how space weather, the solar, solar winds and all this stuff affects actually and creates sometimes hurricanes, and it affects earthquakes, and it's just like crazy.
Well, good thing we've got a space force to fuck up their space weather that's messing with the planet. All sorts of
yeah.
Anyways, dude, I need to get going to bed.
Yeah.
I'm usually never up this late, but anyways,
no,
it's been great hanging. Thank you. This is the initial live recording that we didn't even plan today, but we're just like, when can we get together? And I didn't feel like doing it tomorrow night, so I'm like, you know what, my kids are in bed. Let's just do it now. So
yeah, there we go.
So if you guys want to, see the stuff that we post on a weekly basis, or actually not a weekly, daily basis, different articles on the Discord, I'll link that in the description. Also, we'll link the Anarchapulco video that I did and at the presentation that I thought, personally, in my own humble opinion, thought it was pretty fantastic on all. It
was top notch
right now.
I could vouch for that.
Was that white supremacist symbol that you're posting up there? I don't know if you're allowed to do that now, so we're gonna get.
Hey, it's a red supremacy. That's what it is. I'm not white. Well, I'm actually very white. I'm way whiter than you, so
like translucent. But if you're standing next to Naomi, then you might not be as white as her.
No.
But Anyways, thanks for joining us. We will be posting. So not everything makes it onto World Alternative Media. And so with this, we have a little more control of it. So if you guys want to go subscribe to Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor channel, I'm trying to get John to have his own channel too, but it is sort of a pain trying to upload videos and stuff. So I've told him he should put out his own The Economic Truth deal. And
it's coming. Just wait and see.
That'd be a great time to have more of that dollar bills flying out of there.
I'm getting some theft back from the government. So
okay. Cool. Well, anyways, thank you guys for joining us. This is Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, and actually we didn't even practice this out, but I'm hoping you just say your name now. So then Tim Picciott, Liberty Advisor
and John SNEISEN'S from The Economic Truth.
Take care, guys. Thank you for watching.
Adios.